Okay, it's recording.
Okay, I'll take us in if you don't mind, Raphael.
All right.
And then we'll get right into your college games. Okay, we are going to go in 3, 2. Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo back again with What Are the Odds? Joining me as always is the sexual Mexican Raphael Esparza. Before we get to our games, the games that jumped out at us, the lines that we saw on the board, and we're like, something is not right there. First, I want to do a little bit of house cleaning. Down in the description, make sure you bang on that free 60 link that will take you to Doc Sports and give you $60 free to use towards any handicapper, any package, and most importantly this time of year, any sport that you want. Obviously, we are talking football lines every week on this show for now. But don't forget, NHL is ripping and rolling. We have some guys off to some very hot starts to the NHL season. And on Tuesday, just yesterday, the NBA tipped off. And I know that you are very excited about that, Raphael. You are looking at two of the most experienced, most successful NBA handicappers on the Doc Sports site. I'm not going to tell you who, but one of us has 3 straight winning years for almost $17,000 in profit for their clients. I'm not going to tell you who. I'm going to let you go to the website and figure that out for yourself. So, all right, that's on one side, Raphael. Let's drill down here on football. Starting to get serious. We're getting a little deeper into the year. Books have a lot of information. The bettors have a lot of information. This is when the margin's starting to tighten a little bit for gamblers. And the first game that we're going to talk about is one that caught your eye out in Sin City. We have Boise State, ranked Boise State team coming off a bye week, going into UNLV for a little Mountain West Conference Championship rematch from last year. What do you see when you look at this number in this matchup?
I'm a little torn that this game is Friday night because I really want to watch Game 1 of the World Series, Ohtani versus Judge, and I can guarantee I think World Series Game 1 might have more TV ratings than this Boise State-Utah. But this Boise State-UNLV game, I'm sorry, UNLV, not Utah, has very big implications that could matter all the way till the end of December when we're talking about the committee, because Boise State right now is the #1 leader for non-conference going in on this one, and everyone's chasing them. Army, Navy, Tulane, the list can go on. So this game is going to be watched by a lot of different people just because of the implications. You know, this game right here, Boise State's at the Death Star, UNLV at where the Raiders play, and this screams to me Syracuse UNLV we saw 4 weeks ago when UNLV was red hot. Everyone was mentioning them. Got bet, opened up at 3, got bet all the way up to 6. Now Boise State, who has, at least in my eyes, the Heisman favorite running back. Can the UNLV stop the run? They had trouble stopping the run in the second half against Syracuse. Now they have a beast in the backfield. I know Boise State's laying 3. The reason why I want to talk about this because there's no way 3 is going to be there by Friday. 3.5 popped up today, and I can guarantee you it's probably going to be 3.5 to 4. I don't think we'll go past 4, but I think the betting public's going to say, hey, Syracuse came in here and ran over them in the second half. What is the Heisman favorite? And Boise State has a neutral quarterback. They also run. What's going to happen throughout 4 quarters in this game? Can UNLV stop the run? I just thought this number was kind of low. I would have probably made it 3.5 right away and still get that money, and then move it to 4, 4.5, and then you'll get UNLV money on Friday just because they're at home. And there's still been kind of a good story in UNLV in their football programs. I like this game just because of the number, and it just screams to me when Syracuse went to the Death Star and ran over them in the second half. I think Boise State, me and you can probably agree, are a better running team than Syracuse is. I think UNLV might be in a little bit of trouble. I know everyone else, Army, Navy, Tulane, and list can go on, are probably big UNLV fans. I say grab the number now because I don't think that field goal is going to be there.
Yeah, I mentioned this is a rematch of a game from last December. Boise State did roll over UNLV last December, 44-20 in that game. And Boise State, if you remember last year, probably not as good as they are this year. They let their coach go. They had some issues last season. They were able to right the ship, and they were able to bowl over probably a better UNLV team last year. So I do give them the slight edge there as well. Boise State, they've won 4 straight, both straight up and against the spread. And like I said, they're off a bye week. Use that information as you want. You know that I think that that's an overrated handicapping angle, but they have had 2 weeks to prepare for a familiar opponent in a big game. But Raphael, one of the things I want to talk about with this matchup is a little inside baseball type of stuff. UNLV being, the Vegas home team, right? Got to imagine that there's a lot of locals that are very finely in tune with this team, I guess we'll say. So the fact that this number is moving from 3 to 3.5, you think it'll be 4, 4.5. Should we, as outside of Vegas bettors, look at that and say, okay, these people are in the eye of the storm. This is their hometown team. Where the Vegas money is going should be kind of an indicator on where this game is going to go. Does that theory hold any water for you?
I haven't seen any sharp money come in, so that's a little bit shocking that we're here on Wednesday, mid-afternoon. I have not seen any sharp money come in. Usually it comes in around Tuesday in the afternoon, first hit, Thursday afternoon, second hit, and then, of course, Friday, Saturdays for the weekend games. Have not seen any sharp money. Sharp money has not moved as a half a point. Like I said, one shop has a half a point. I do believe one offshore book has 3.5 as well. So that kind of shocks me. I just don't know if UNLV's defense can handle the run game for all 4 quarters. They couldn't handle it. They played Syracuse really tough, but at the end of the day, that defense was gassed from trying to stop the run for all 4 quarters, and Boise State can run the ball. And don't forget, their only loss was against Oregon, the number 1 team, by 3 points. So that holds a lot to me. Even though Oregon struggled in the beginning of the season, they still struggled against Ohio State, but they hung around. And normally you see a Mountain West team versus a Big Ten team as Oregon. Normally those things are blowout games. Oregon was almost, I think, a double-digit favorite against Boise State and had trouble. I just don't see the Broncos having trouble with the run game.
Okay, so last question on this one is, when you see this number, you see value with Boise State. You don't see a potential trap line. Because you know how sometimes you look at these matchups, you look at these games, you look at where you expect the number to be. It sounds like you would have expected this number to be a little bit higher, maybe in that 5 to 6 range would have made you look a little bit at UNLV. The fact that it is lower, it's not making you pause and say, okay, wait a second. Maybe UNLV is primed for the upset. Instead, you're looking at this and you're saying, you know what, this is a little too low. I think the value is on Boise State. Is that?
I think it's just a little bit too low for me. I mean, I don't think I would have went 5 on my number. I do believe I made it like 4.5. So a 3 and a 4.5 is a huge difference when you're making numbers.
Sure. Okay. Next game that we're going to go to the other side of the country, MetLife Stadium, where the good old Giants and Jets losers play. Notre Dame is taking on Navy. Navy, great story. Them and Army, the armed services just representing on the gridiron this fall. They're in the top 25. They're taking on the top 25 and potentially playoff bound Notre Dame team on a neutral site. But Notre Dame's a big favorite, 2-touchdown favorite. They're -13 in this matchup. Raphael, what were your thoughts? Why was this game one that kind of popped up on your radar?
I don't understand why. It opened up at 12.5, and they got quickly moved to 13. We could see a 14, and I know Notre Dame's playing much better after the loss against Northern Illinois, even though Northern Illinois has struggled since that win. But all Navy has been doing is running and scoring, and their defense is really good. They just outscored, I wrote down, 269 to 118 this year. They've been phenomenal. Bet the over on Navy and Army every game if you want to, because their over money has just been ridiculous. I don't understand the big line move. I know Notre Dame money was going to come in because touchdown Deja's money comes in all the time. But I was a little bit shocked at how much of this line was. I thought I made my number 10. I'm thinking, ooh, that's kind of high. Navy's a target town. Navy's we haven't seen Navy throw the ball as much as we have, but their defense has been playing really well. They run the clock out like no one does, both Army and Navy. How if they control the line of scrimmage, how's Notre Dame going to be able to cover a double-digit number? Notre Dame wins this one, I do, but 13, I would not shock if we see 14 on this game. So I thought 12.5 was still high. 13 right now is high, and I think it keeps on climbing.
Okay, I actually kind of disagree with you on this one. I completely understand the line, and part of me, at least early in the week, is leaning a little bit on Notre Dame. I went against them last week against Georgia Tech. Tough Georgia Tech team, very good Georgia Tech team. They run the ball a lot. I don't want to say they do things similar similarly to what Navy does, but let's just say that their strengths and weaknesses are very similar to the Middies. And Notre Dame really had no problem in that game. That game was in Atlanta, so it was in Georgia Tech's backyard, so it was basically a road game, and they ran through them. I mean, Notre Dame has covered 3 straight games, covered 4 of their last 5, and these two teams met just last year over in Ireland in that opener, and that was a bloodbath. That was a goddamn bloodbath. 42-3, Notre Dame beat Navy. And what that tells me is that last year going into the season, Notre Dame was able to spend a lot of time preparing for the option, preparing for Navy's attack. They got that playbook. They're going to pull that playbook out. This week of preparation for Navy is not going to be as difficult as it is for some teams that, you know, they only see the option once a year, once every few years. They're not used to it. Notre Dame's strength is its defense. And I think that they could choke the life out of this Navy offense. And Raphael, let me ask you something. Does it worry you at all that Navy's big win this year against no one, maybe Memphis was their best win? Does it worry you that Navy is undefeated and they're a great story and everybody's pulling for them? They really haven't played anybody and they really haven't beaten anybody. How much does that?
If this was in Notre Dame, if this was a home game, I wouldn't touch this game. I would not touch it at all because, first of all, Notre Dame would probably be a 17 or higher point favorite if this was at home. It's at a kind of a neutral site, and I just think the way Navy has been playing all season long, they're milking the clock. And if they get the ball, and if Notre Dame plays like they did against Northern Illinois, it's going to be a lot closer game. I'm not saying call the upset like we saw. What year was that when Navy won? 2016 when Navy won it at South Bend. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I just think the number is going to continue to climb. And it's a different Navy team than we saw in Ireland. I don't take Ireland games because it's the first game of the season. Some of these kids have never been on a plane or out of the country. So I don't really put that much stock in that Dublin game or something like that. And I know it was a bloodbath, but this game I just think is meaningful for Navy. We've never seen them like this. And they've covered every game except one. When they were minus 31, I think it was to Bucknell. So it's not like, I know they're playing Memphis and teams like that, but winning, all you do is win games that's in front of you. And that's all they've been doing. So now Notre Dame is going to be in front of you. And those kids remember what happened last year.
Okay, so forget about it from the sportsbook perspective of where to set the number to balance the action in this game. Just from a handicapper perspective, where do you think a more accurate line would have been? Or what do you think a more accurate line would have been for this matchup?
Right now, the books are telling me the public, it's Joes versus pros. So some sharp money came in on Notre Dame, but all the public knows the story of Navy. So you're going to get, boom, Navy money. Just like every Army game, you're going to get it because of the story. Can you balance the books with sharp money? Right now, they're just telling me it's all Joe money and then a couple sharp money left and right. So if you can cover that, yes. I just think the number is just a tad out of control. Again, if Notre Dame wins by 10, I'm still covering this number if I want to take the plus 13, plus 14, as I think this number climbs.
Well, that's what I mean. Like from a handicapper's perspective, where would you have had this number? 8.5, 9?
Probably like 10. Probably around 10, 11.
Okay. Okay, that's what I was curious about. All right, shifting gears to the next game. Now, this is one of my picks, and this one leapt off the board. Not only because I'm still a little salty with one of the teams involved, but we have BYU. Okay, ranked number 13th in the country, coming off a nice but close win and not cover. The first time in 9 games that BYU did not cover a spread last week against Oklahoma State. They did win that game at home, though. Heading to Central Florida as an underdog. This line opened with Central Florida minus 2.5, favored over the ranked top 15 BYU team. The number has come down a little bit. I'm seeing minus 1.5 right now, but Central Florida is still favored. Okay, is still favored against the team right there knocking on the door for one of the 12 playoff spots. Raphael, explain this one to me.
Going to UCF is it's not an easy task to go there and try to steal a road win. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And I just don't think people realize how good this BYU team is. I mean, they're not flashy. They're not they don't make the news. They don't make top 10 lists and stuff like that. All they do is just win games and cover games this year. We don't hear that much about them. And I just don't think the bettors know that much about them. I just think people see UCF as a tough place to play. I thought this would have been close to a pick 'em, and then maybe BYU would be a small road favorite. I'm a little bit shocked on this one. I put a big X. I can't wait to watch this because I think this BYU team is going to be fun to watch if they can make the playoffs.
Yeah, how are they not favored? I do not understand how Central Florida is the favorite here, just by virtue of the fact that they have a losing record on the season, and BYU has that big number right next to their name, right? You know how it is that those teams that are ranked in the top 25 that have that number right next to their name, those odds get shaded their way because the sports books know that Joe Public is just going to pick up their phone, look online, say, oh, look, they're number 13 in the country. They must be really good. I want to bet them. Normally, this would be a huge indicator to me, the fact that BYU is an underdog on the road here in this spot, okay? But the sports books, Central Florida is a team we've talked about several times on this very show. They are a team that the books have gotten wrong repeatedly this year, okay? Double-digit favorites against Colorado. They get blown out by 4 touchdowns. I think they were a 1-point favorite at Florida the following week. They got rocked by Florida. Like, the sports books have not even been close with them. They were 13.5-point underdogs at Iowa State last week, okay? Blew a 2-touchdown lead, lost that one in heartbreaking fashion, giving up a touchdown in the final minute of the game. So you have to wonder if that lingers a little bit. But you got to ask yourself, okay, BYU and Iowa State on a neutral field, all right? Iowa State probably a slight favorite in that game, small favorite, nominal favorite, right? Central Florida goes from being a 2-touchdown underdog against them to being favored at home against BYU. I don't understand it. BYU, as I mentioned, there's 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 games. So they have been cashing tickets left and right. They already won at Baylor. They already won at SMU. Those are 2 teams that are probably better than Central Florida. And this isn't even the noon start, right? You get those West Coast teams that have to come east for that noon start. Some handicappers say, oh, that's overblown. When it comes to college kids, I 100% believe in that as a handicapping angle. That's a factor. But it's a 3:30 game. So I really don't understand this one. Raphael, you're me. Put yourself in my position right now. You hear my whole breakdown and how this number is driving me nuts and how I don't understand it. For bettors out there who are in this exact situation, what is your advice? Is your advice to just completely ignore the game, put the big X over it like you did? Or should I reluctantly trust the books and jump on Central Florida here and just say, I don't understand this line. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I'm going to bet it.
I would grab the +2, and I wouldn't put a lot on it.
Option 3.
I wouldn't put a lot on it because it is a fishy line. I don't understand it as well. I mean, their Baylor game was probably the only significant game that you can probably talk about. But at the same time, I just logged into the back end of a book right now to see the bets coming in, and it's almost like 78% of $1,000 or more bets are on UCF. Like I don't like I said, I told you I made this number close to a pick in my eyes. Maybe I thought the books would maybe move it to BYU as a 1 favorite. If you're gonna bet this, I don't want no action on UCF. I'd rather have no action on UCF and then they win. I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't play that. And then play BYU and say, oh, you know what? Maybe the books were right. I lost. I had BYU. Hats off to the books. You won. You beat me this time. I'd rather do it that way or just pass in general. You know what? My favorite line is Star Wars. Sometimes it's a trap. It's just a trap.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the best bets are the ones you don't make.
Yeah.
Honestly, to walk away. For me, it's Central Florida or nothing. That's how I usually handle these lines. If I see something that is this glaring that I just cannot wrap my brain around, I just do not have a full comprehension of, I either lean into that and say somebody somewhere knows something, or I just stay away. But this is one that I'm definitely going to be interested in, one that, maybe we'll talk about next week and see how these turned out. Okay, last college football game that we're going to talk about, Washington at Indiana. The Indiana freight train just keeps rolling on. I had them again last week against Nebraska. You know me, I've been on the bandwagon with the Hoosiers for about a month now. but they lose Curtis Rourke, their veteran quarterback, came over from Ohio, kid can play, became a fringe Heisman candidate, hurt his thumb, had surgery this week. Good news for Indiana is he should be back sometime in November, they're thinking. They have him questionable for this week, but he's not going to play. He's not going to play this week. Despite losing their starting quarterback, Indiana is still a 6.5-point favorite against Washington. I guess I'm not surprised that they are still favored in this game, but what I am surprised by is the fact that the news that their quarterback is out hasn't moved the line at all. Like, I expected it to waver kind of one way or another. Again, help me make sense of this, Raphael.
I just think the Indiana bettors all season long bet this game probably didn't even know that their quarterback is out. All they know that Indiana was a talk of the town. All they is cashing tickets, and they kept on. And College Game Day is there as well. Work opened up as 100,000 to 1 to win the Heisman. Before he got hurt, he was down to 80 to 1. So most books took him off because of this thumb injury. I was a little bit blown away. I was more like, ooh, maybe this might be a nice spot for Washington on this one. The heart and soul quarterback is out. And I'm like, wow, 6.5 still? I'm a little bit blown, but this one's right away. I'm just going to sit back, enjoy it. My sister's an IU grad. Her husband's an IU grad. I'm going to wear my candy cane pants on when I'm watching this game. And if Indiana wins, and I'm like, damn it, why didn't I bet him? I've been betting him for the past 4 weeks. Yeah, that's it. Like you said, sometimes the best bet is the bet you didn't make.
I think I'm going to stay with Indiana, as crazy as that.
Oh, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
But it also has less to do for me with just riding the Indiana train as the fact that Washington was a team that I've been betting against and fading. But I took Iowa out last week, and Iowa blew them out of the water. I just don't really like this Washington team. They're in a big transition year themselves. So I think if Indiana was playing somebody else that I was more in favor of, I would just stay away. But the other thing in college football that's weird is, and it may or may not be the case this week, teams lose star players all the time, and the guy that comes off the bench is just as good, if not better. There's just weird, fluky things like that. So I don't love the number, but I probably will be on Indiana. It's just bizarre to me that the number is holding firm this week. You would think that if this was the case, that the bettors would be staking a position one way or another, okay? Either we'd be seeing hard money on Washington that like, hey, this is too many points. Indiana the bubble's going to burst at some point. They lost their star quarterback. Give me those points. A lot of money coming in on Washington, and that number starts to creep down. Or, hey, Indiana, there's room on the freight train. Jump on the bandwagon, and that number would keep going up. It's just odd to me that it has not wavered and does not appear to be wavering at all this week. So
this number opened up globally while Indiana was playing, and it was 9.5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Makes me feel a little bit better about it then. That at least there was some movement due to Rourke's injury.
Yeah, but Saturday at I'm trying to see 8:18. I'll give you a direct time. 8:18 was 9.5.
Right. But as of Sunday night, there aren't a ton of people that are looking at numbers Saturday for the following Saturday. But when the public got a hold of this number Sunday night, Monday morning, really hasn't moved since then, right?
No, it moved. It got bit down at 7. And then stayed at 7 for like a couple hours, and then boom, 6.5. And then it's been solid for 6.5.
Okay. Opposite end of the spectrum, we had big injuries and a big line movement in the NFL. One of the games you want to talk about was Atlanta heading to Tampa Bay. Saw kind of a similar situation to what we saw last week with the Jets, but for different reasons. Remember, initially Pittsburgh was a small home favorite against the Jets. Jets made that big Devontae Adams trade. Number goes towards New York's way, so that they are a road favorite. We're seeing that here with Atlanta, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was a 2.5 point favorite. They get handled on Monday night against the Ravens, but more importantly, they lose Mike Evans. They lose Chris Godwin. Now Atlanta is coming off a 20-point loss at home to Seattle, is now a favorite at Tampa Bay. Is that an overreaction to the injury? We normally quarterbacks we might see move a line 5 points. But losing 2 receivers and the line shifting 5 points, does that make sense to you?
It does, but if you watch that 49ers game where Brock Purdy was throwing it and the Kansas City these new wide receivers who haven't had game time because for some odd reason, I don't know why all wide receivers are getting hurt this year. But we've been seeing a lot of bad route running with wide receivers are not being the key because they're not normally the key guy out there. And it's just been bad route. And I do believe we're going to see this in Tampa unless for some odd reason they trade for Cooper Kupp in the next couple of days before they make it because that's the hot rumor I am hearing as we speak. And I don't think that's going to happen. You said it. Atlanta laid a big egg last week. Geno Smith didn't even have a good game. He's been throwing 300 yards per day. He only had like less than 210, if I'm not mistaken. He's not like he blew it up. Kirk Cousins just had a bad game. So how do you get rid of a bad game? You go on the road and play a team that's all banged up on offense because they also lost their right guard, Tampa Bay, as well. They're just going to be really shorthanded. And the road favorites have been dominating the last 2 to 3 weeks. I like Atlanta in here to erase it. And Atlanta got to sit around and watch Tampa Bay lose on Monday night, a division rival. They get to see the Saints continue to lose every game that they're playing. And the Panthers are the Panthers. If you're Atlanta, you forget about that loss and win this game against a division rival.
This one, I'm not gonna lie, this was a little bit of a heartbreaker for me because all things being equal, this would have been my top NFL play, and it would have almost been in game of the year range on Tampa Bay if they hadn't suffered those injuries on Monday night.
Totally agree.
I saw that number was 2.5 before the Monday night games. Already had a big circle, was very excited about that. I'm okay that they lost to the Ravens. In fact, that would have made that play a little bit juicier, but those injuries just ravaged this. These two teams played just a few weeks ago in Atlanta on Thursday night. The Falcons had that exciting walk-off touchdown win. They were not the better team in that game, okay? And I like Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta. I follow this team pretty closely just by virtue of being in the city, but this team is not as good as people want them to be. Pretty good team, solid team, perfectly, mid-tier in the NFL, but defensively, they are not good. I don't know if it's scheme. I don't think it's personnel because they have Pro Bowlers at all 3 levels with Grady Jarrett, Judon, their 2 safeties, D'Alfred. There is a lot of talent here. They have 6 sacks on the year. And Geno Smith could have sat down, had a picnic lunch, and then woke up and then took a nap and then woke up and threw the ball to DK Metcalf last week. Atlanta did outgain Seattle. They won the time of possession. They had more first downs. They ran more plays, and they lost by 20 points. There is something missing with this Atlanta team that I really don't like them. But look, we touched on it. Tampa Bay, you lose Godwin, you lose Evans. You basically have lost your offensive identity. Now that's going to put more pressure on Baker Mayfield to be the guy, to make the plays. We've seen him in that situation before, not his specialty. Okay. Decision-making, carrying the team. Sometimes he tries to do too much, tries to be a little too much of a hero. That's when he gets in trouble. We saw a couple bad interceptions on Monday night against the Ravens. So not a good situation. Raphael, I got to ask you though, value on Atlanta? Is this a stay away? What's your final read on this number?
Right now, I thought it was going to be a 3 minus 120 type of game. So I do see the value on 2.5 just because I just don't know how Baker's going to move this offense, missing his 2. I mean, I know the tight ends are going to be really probably his safety blanket in this game, and Atlanta struggles with tight ends. I just don't see that happening all 4 quarters. I think just Atlanta squeaks one out, maybe by a field goal or something like that. If this moves to 3, I want nothing to do with it because that's the number I got. I just thought 2.5 controlling your division after a bad home loss. You don't get that much option going to a division team that's just devastated and on injuries on the offensive ball. This is something you want to make a statement in your division. Say, hey, you know what? We're going to pull away right now, beating Tampa Bay for the 2nd time, and the other 2 people in this division are going to look up all season long.
Yeah, the Falcons are 3-0 straight up and against the spread in their divisional games this year. The Falcons have won 3 out of their last 4 against Tampa Bay. They're 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 against Tampa Bay. And we've been talking all about the injuries on Tampa Bay's offense. They got big problems on defense, too. In their last 3 games, they have allowed 104 points. Not great. Last thought on this, 2 guys that I'm going to be looking at for daily props, which Raphael and I also release on Sundays in the NFL, among other days and other sports. I'm going to be looking at Bucky Irving props for Tampa Bay because I think without their receivers, instead of putting it all on Baker, I expect them to run the ball 45 times.
I would take rushing and receiving with him too.
That's what I'm saying. He is an explosive guy. They're going to put the ball in his hands. So I'm going to be looking at Bucky Irvin and Ray McLeod for Atlanta. He's usually good for one big play down the field. Kirk Cousins threw for over 500 yards against the Bucs the last time they played them. And as I mentioned, Tampa Bay right now is having trouble stopping anybody giving up an average of 35 points a game over their last 3. So, all right, next game.
I'm going to cut you off real quick. We watched Baltimore just beat up on Tampa Bay. Derrick Henry and was just phenomenal. How is he 40-1 to win the MVP? 13 quarterbacks are ahead of him. Give me a break. This guy might break the all-time rushing record. He's 100 years old. Give him some MVP love. I'm tired of these quarterbacks. It's 13 ahead of Derrick Henry for the MVP. I had to get that off my chest. I'm sorry.
No, hey, this is a place for sharing, okay, and understanding, and we'll work through it together, bud. I'm here for you. Always here for you. All right. Next game that we want to talk about is the Eagles at Cincinnati. Really surprised to see Cincinnati as a favorite against kind of anyone competent. Is this just an anti-Philly backlash? Like again, explain this one to me. Both teams are coming off back-to-back wins, convincing back-to-back wins. But you know why? Because they both just played the Giants and Browns. Okay, that was who both of these two teams played in their last game. So what gives? Cincinnati's 0-3 at home. The Eagles are a pretty good team. Like, are people buying into Cincinnati? Why are they favored? Why isn't this game a pick? What's the story?
There's 4 games in the NFL and in college, and I made pick that the books made 2.5. And I'm like, like I said, is it anti-Eagle money coming in? People just hate Sirianni that much. I don't understand it. And I know, yes, they beat up on a bad team, but if you're the Eagles, that's all you need W's to try to mold that locker room into a happy, joy, because I'm sure that locker room is not pleasant to be in because everyone's finger pointing still, even after a win. But I'm not sold on Cincinnati. If we were talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, Cincinnati's defense is worse than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. So this one, when you send me your plays this afternoon when we're going back and forth on plays, I'm like, damn, I was going to pick this one if I needed another one because I don't understand this number. And you know my rules. Sometimes if I just don't understand the numbers, I'm just passing it and I'll watch it and learn from it. People don't understand. Sometimes you don't need to bet a game, but you can learn from that game.
Yeah, if it had been a pick, if it had been even -1 either way, I don't think it would have been a shocker to me. Like if Philadelphia had been a -1 point favorite on the road here, that wouldn't have stunned me, I think, as much as making Cincinnati a 2.5 point favorite. Just an odd number right there. All right, last game that we're going to talk about, Dallas at San Francisco. San Francisco loses the Super Bowl rematch game against Kansas City. But more than that, they lose Brandon Ayuk for the year. Deebo Samuel, had to leave with pneumonia. He left the hospital yesterday. Still no Christian McCaffrey. Like, this 49ers team is crumbling before our very eyes, yet is still a very firm 4.5 point favorite against the Cowboys this week. Raphael, break it down for me.
I don't know why people continue to bet the Cowboys. It's just an awful game to look at. No quick line movement, not that much action. The San Francisco bettors can actually say, oh, yeah, the hangover is fixed, but they can actually say, we're not playing good because of injuries. Their injury list is CMC's in Germany trying to find another fix for his knee. We have guys in the hospital for pneumonia. I've had pneumonia. That's no joke. I'm actually shocked that he was able to put his pads on and stand around on the sidelines with pneumonia. That is probably the best stat of the day, how he was able to do that. And Brock Purdy has not looked like Brock Purdy we've seen in the past, but I got to give him a pass because he's throwing to guys he's probably never even heard of or maybe delivered a pizza to his house a couple of weeks ago. So if it's either 40, I can't believe I'm going to say this, it's either 49ers or pass and maybe the over because I think we're going to see points in Dallas come on this one, but why did they flex this game? That's probably the bigger question.
The big names. They're both still a draw, and they'll lean into the rivalry aspect of it and all that. But for all of the reasons that you just said, okay, why is this number 4.5? With all the injuries, this, that, and the other thing, 2.5, 3, solid 3, firm 3. Don't you think that would have been a little bit more appropriate, especially when you look around the NFL, right? Especially these last few weeks, we are seeing numbers between 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3. Now this week is different because we have a lot of awful teams playing a lot of very good teams. People are now lashing on to the fact that, you know, the Saints, the Jags, the Panthers, the Patriots, that these teams are just absolutely hopeless and pathetic. So we're starting to see those big numbers. But for the last few weeks, we've been seeing those numbers between 1 and 3. 4 just seems a little stiff, no?
It is. I thought it would be at least 2.5. I mean, this one opened up at 6.5. So then I don't know how much they're stuck on that already. Maybe they just didn't want to move it 4 points and then try to get middle. So I don't know how much sharp action or any action came in and that number.
That's a useful tidbit for
it's still a 7 o'clock game. You can put up 4, and the betting public will tell you Saturday, Sunday morning when they're chasing after the afternoon games what this number should be. I mean, I do believe 49ers money is going to come in because everyone makes fun of the Cowboys. They make fun of the Cowboys. They don't bet the Cowboys now these days. So I wouldn't be shocked if the 49er comes in. So it's probably going to be 49 and over coming in when this bowling kicks off.
All right, Raphael, get us out of here. Give us a free play. What do we got for the peoples?
My free play, where did it go? Oh yeah, Tennessee, Detroit.
Oh.
I am going with Detroit, even though it's 11. But they just got rid of Hopkins, even though they didn't use him really. I mean, I think he had 1 catch and minus yards in the last 2 games. But what is that locker room right now? I mean, Levis is out. Mason Rudolph is your quarterback, and what the Lions did look like last week. I just think the offensive keeps on rolling. I was either going to say free play on the Lions. I don't mind laying 11.5, or take the over. Either or. It's a 2-for-1. Take either one because I think Detroit puts up a big number on the scoreboard as well because that offense has been really, really good. I'm just a little bit shocked that this one wasn't 13, maybe even close to 14.
All right, my free play, I'm going against everything that Raphael said. I am actually going to take the points with the Cowboys on this one. This one feels like a last stand for Dallas. Now, look, I'm with you. Cowboys aren't very good. I've been laughing at them all season. I enjoy watching them fail and watching Jerry Jones be a huge loser. However, okay, they're not an incompetent team. They're not like the Titans. They're not like the Panthers. They're not that bad. Okay, they're not as good as they want to be, as good as people want them to be, but they're not hopeless. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They need a win. They need something good to happen. So I really do feel like we are going to get a focused effort. They may be getting Micah Parsons back, and some of the injured players may be coming back for them. They also have a huge revenge angle in this game. If you remember last year, they went on the road, and San Francisco absolutely mauled them, embarrassed them 42-10. That came on the back of back-to-back years where San Francisco eliminated the Cowboys in the postseason. So if Dallas can't come into this game focused, motivated, and playing with a little bit of an edge with their season on the line, with 2 weeks to prep, playing with revenge against a team that has just been absolutely decimated by injuries and is in a letdown spot. Let's not pretend that that game against Kansas City didn't mean a lot to them last week, that Super Bowl rematch. So they could have a little bit of an emotional letdown in this one. All the things are set up that if Dallas can't compete, be competitive, either win this game or play a close game within the number, then they truly are irredeemable. So I'm going to take the points, and it would not surprise me if Dallas won that game outright. All right. Thank you for stopping by. This was What Are the Odds? We will be back again next Wednesday. For Raphael Esparza, Robert Ferringo, and everybody else at Doc Sports, Carpe Diem, and good luck.